Okay, here we are on a beautiful spring morning. Well, it's very nearly spring, isn't it, Pat?
It certainly
Uh,
is.
and is it the joys of spring in your heart as well as outside your window?
Absolutely, Jude. It's a beautiful. I'm living here, or a resident here in North Donegal, and it's a beautiful morning, Jude.
Hmm.
Absolutely, the sun's shining, and as my wife keeps telling me, the whole light in the sky has changed. Spring is here. The dark days of winter are behind us.
That's right. That's right.
I hope.
You see it in the evening and you see it in the morning.
Oh,
You
Jude,
get
hey,
up.
what is they said? I think it's 2 minutes, 7 seconds each day. It's getting longer. So by the end of February, the end of this month, we should be late
uh,
until about 6:30.
but Pat, thinking about it another way, we're getting nearer every day to the point where the days are beginning to get shorter again.
Oh, Jesus, Jude, give us a break. Hey, Jude, hey, before we even start, let me tell you something. Here,
Yeah.
we've talked about this a million times, but I heard an RT about 10 minutes ago. Apparently, the requests for divorce in the Republic of Ireland have gone to the roof. And my wife pointed out to me that there are numerous weddings which will now never take place. She saw an advert the last day, a woman selling bridal dress and bridesmaids dresses. You know, people were supposed to get married last year, this year, because the toll of the pandemic on relationships has gone through the roof. That'll be an interesting sociological
Yeah, well,
study
it
when it's
is.
all over.
Is that because they were these people who were confined to the same space, or are these
I
people who were
presume
separated
so.
by?
I presume, well, the divorce ones obviously would be probably.
Uh,
By the way, that's only about 10 minutes. One, I didn't hear the detail of it, but I heard one of the contributor saying that the number of phone requests to solicitors' offices has literally gone to the roof. Almost not literally,
well,
but
well,
gone to the roof.
if they couldn't stick each other for a year, aren't they lucky they didn't get married?
Yeah, but hey, in close contact, I remember some people saying, "Hey, it's all right spending after work all day, spend an evening with my wife or my husband." But hey, I didn't really expect to be spending all day with them and maybe a couple of kids, and God knows the stress levels involved there. But I mean, that's just through that
It
to
is a
confuse you
difficulty, all
first thing in
right.
the morning.
I'm being a bit
Right?
harsh, actually, but at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time, I would say that when you're young and you're in love, you want
yeah.
to spend time with the object of your desire, and you don't
Yeah.
really want your mate or anybody else around. So these people had a ball for the
Yeah.
last year. Should have had
Yeah.
anyway. Maybe better to find
Anyway,
out now than find out down the road.
down the line,
Okay, let's go
right?
to our stories for today in the newspapers and elsewhere. Now, this first one is actually a tweet that Sam McBride, who's the political editor of the newsletter, made. And it was about DUP leader Arlene Foster, Lord Dodds, and Gavin Robinson. And he says, today these three met the Loyalist Community Council, a legal body which incorporates illegal paramilitary groups. She said it
Yeah.
was constructive and useful, and they discussed political and constitutional methods to oppose the Northern Ireland Protocol. So there does seem to be a contradiction in terms there, doesn't there? That a legal organization would speak for illegal organizations.
Yeah, some of that is, I think I keep repeating this, but see, Southern politicians, the hypocrisy. Jude, look, I, Arlene Foster and these people come out and say openly, we've met with representatives of the UVAF, the UDA, Red Hat and Commandos at a public meeting, and there's almost zero reaction to it. And I'm just saying the hypocrisy, the double standards that apply. Can you imagine for even 10 seconds the absolute outrage, the sort of the wondrous and that would be on RT if Michelle O'Neill and Conor Murphy had come out and said they'd meet the Republican Communities Group, which included distant IRA, Provost, real IRA, and all the rest of it. It would be unbelievable. I was going to say the shitstorm on the of the media would be unbelievable. But
Yeah.
here, no wonder nationalists sit around and say, the hypocrisy of Micheál Martin and Owen Harris and the establishment in the South is just, absolutely gobsmackingly ridiculous.
The fact that they are unionist inclined in their sympathies.
No, I don't even know about that, Jude, but it's just that it seems that the reserve totally their condemnation. Now, if you're going to condemn Republicans for doing this, you should be equally vocal in condemning Loyal. But there seems to be this sort of thing. Don't The nationalists in the North are supposed to shut up and say nothing and take everything and let Jude. let's be honest. If anybody in the nationalist community had done this, it would have been unbelievable. Here's
Well, I
me, me and
agree.
you, me and you are talking about. I don't hear it in RTE. I don't hear it on anywhere else. You know.
Mm. Well, you see, for a start, I don't know if this could happen within Republican circles, because as the claim is that the IRA has disbanded, it
Yeah,
has decommissioned its weapons, and you don't hear of meetings of them, or you don't hear of
no,
them being in a huddle discussing
no,
stuff, despite these
yeah,
things with the vague, shadowy figures. But I mean, this is
yeah.
absolutely open. She's saying we're meeting with these groups, and these
And Jude,
groups are illegal.
hold on, let me get this clear. They are representative of the UVF, the UDA, and Red Hand
Yeah,
Command,
yeah,
who
yeah.
allegedly are a legal organisation.
So is it
So,
a kind of a filter that they go through, that, we're illegal, we go through this filter of this body, and we come out the other side and we're chatting away to our
yeah,
and we're clean?
I don't get this. And and see, if you buy all those usual Sunday papers, you will not hear mention this. But hey, if you do something, if RT puts out a program that might be vaguely sort of questioning what's going on Earth, it's called almost a pro fellow travelers.
Well,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, here's my interpretation of this. You said that Arlene and company openly say that they've been talking to this Loyalist Communities
Yeah,
Council, representing the UVF, etc. I
yeah.
think that's not a boast. That's a strategic move. I
Yeah,
think they want to
I'm
show
accepting that.
we
Jude,
have the backing
I'm
of
not so
these.
sure. I'm not sure so sure even I'm against it that much. I'm just saying it's a hypocrisy that surrounds it.
Oh, but I mean, I think it's interesting to keep it clear in your mind what they're doing. I think
Yeah,
it's not that well, first of all, they're saying loyalist, that is to say, working class uh, people who were maybe involved in the Troubles are on our side. We're in
yeah,
communication with them. This is United Unionism, pan unionism,
yeah,
fighting against this protocol. The
yeah.
second thing is, I think that in the background all the time, there's this notion of a border poll. So if they can say, essentially, don't forget the fact that we've got the loyalist
Yeah.
paramilitaries. They're always in our hand
They're
of
going to play
cards,
it
so to
both
speak.
ways. Yeah, they're going to play it both ways. They're going to say we have met these people to keep them on side constitutionally, and they'll always get that in about legal methods too. But the implied thing is, hey, they're on our side, and we can unleash them whenever we want. That's the underground bit of it.
Well, the interesting thing for me is that the person who tweeted this was not
Sam
a
McBride.
Republican or nationalist journalist. It was
Yeah,
Sam McBride, who presumably is a unionist. I'm not sure if he
yeah.
is or not, but I
Well,
would
he's a
think he
son of a
is. And
clergyman, and he works for the
he's a
newsletter.
political editor
So
for the newsletter.
I don't think he'll be joining Sinn Féin anytime soon.
No, so he's the one that is, well, if not exposing this, he does seem to be critical of it, which is
By the way, let's get this on the record. I have to stand up for Sam McBride is one of the best journalists in Northern Ireland by some considerable distance. And no matter whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Nationalist, Unionist, Sam McBride's an excellent journalist.
well, yeah, I would agree completely, and very effective. I'd like to see him smile once or twice, though. But
Yeah,
very effective on television.
yeah, he's
And
very good.
it's very
Yeah,
hard to feel opposed to the guy. He
very
does seem
logical
a
and very
reasonable
balanced. Yeah,
and sincere
yeah.
man. I'm wondering, uh, what do we do when we see this kind of thing? Do you just sort of throw your hands up? Is anybody going to question it? Do
No,
you think any of the
no,
Europe-
it's up to people like me and you because I don't think, and I don't mean this arrogantly, no one else is going to bother their backside highlighting it.
You don't think
But
any of the nationalists or
no, Jude,
Republicans?
Jude, have you heard it anywhere this morning?
No, no, I
No,
haven't.
neither have I.
But
So,
I think if you follow Twitter, I'd say you would have seen a couple of.
yeah, Jude, but that's the usual keyboard warriors. That's not.
No, well,
Well, it's
I'm not
It's
sure. I think they might have been members of Sinn Féin. We're doing it, okay,
Yeah, but no, but sorry, I don't mean that. But it's the usual suspects. Like Sinn Féin's going to raise that. Maybe even me and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
But like, look out for the Sunday Independent, the Irish Times, and see how many of them an RTE.
Well, as I say, in one way, it's really pretty bad. But on the other hand, I could see the argument that Arlene and company would make, and there is some credence to it as well.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're in touch with these people and they were keeping them sort of under control, so to speak.
Yeah, that's
so that we're funneling them into politics, really.
Yeah,
rather than allowing them to run wild. that'd be the charitable view of it. I think myself it's a wee bit of a saber rattling going on.
I hold on. No, it's due. I think it's been played on two levels. Yeah, constitutionally, look, we've talked them to keep them on board, but on the surface, hey, they're there. We're back. They're backing us. Right, go ahead. I'm sorry to
okay.
cut across you off.
Well, we move to the second item, Pat.
Yeah.
And it was one that you raised. That Diane Dodds, who's the Minister for Economics and other things, the economy and so on, had made some was it a complaint or was it a comment about?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jude, for cutting across you again. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that she made some sort of statement about the fact that students were essentially leaking from Coleraine and going to Derry rather than.
Jude, you know, in the context of this, Derry and Strabane, they're quite recently, Sinead McLaughlin, the MLA for an SDLP MLA, raised the point that Derry and Strabane have by far the largest unemployment rate in the north of Ireland, and Jude, that has been there since the foundation of the state. But anyway, let's put that in context. Recently, it's been confirmed that the University of Ulster are moving a sort of a medicine school to Derry, the first of its kind. Now, Derry was supposed to have 10,000 students, and McGee College was supposed to have 10,000 students. It's got about 4,000. Now, Jude, put it in context. I don't know how many Galway has, but I heard yesterday the University of Limerick has 17,000 students, and Limerick is a considerably smaller city than Derry. Right, so Derry has been denied all this. Anyway, the authorities at the UU were moving this facility to Derry, and Diane Dodds, who's the Minister for the Economy, said she was concerned about the future of Coleraine with this decision and about leaking courses to Derry. Now, number one, it had nothing whatever to do with her. She's not the Minister for Education.
No, I think Pat, I was thinking about that, and I think that might be putting it a bit too hard, because the fact of the matter is, if you build up the university in Derry, that's going to have economic consequences that'll be beneficial to Derry.
Yeah,
and likewise, if you
I'll take your correction. Not a problem. In fact, I agree with it. You know, but I thought to myself, Jude, when you think back on it, the whole thing about the second university in Northern Ireland should have definitely been in Derry. The second city, it was given to this market town, little town in the middle of nowhere, Coleraine. And so, and I thought, here we are, years later, like a Minister for the Economy opposing moves to help Derry. And I thought, how did that go? How did that go under the head? I know the sort of news headlines without being highlighted for what it truly was.
Well, she would see it as being not. She wouldn't be concerned about Derry. She'd be concerned about Coleraine, because most of the unionists, maybe most people in Coleraine are probably unionists, and she's concerned that they're going to be left high and dry or not as fair. I mean, I used to work for the Ulster Polytechnic, and the merger between that and the new University of Ulster, as it was called then, into the University of Ulster, or Ulster University, was because Coleraine was about to sink. I remember a colleague of mine saying, somebody asked him what it was like to be in a merger with Coleraine, and he said it's like being strapped to a corpse. In other words, if we hadn't had this merger, Coleraine could have gone under. It just wasn't getting the students.
Yeah. And you know, the whole thing has been the idea of citing a university in Coleraine was built on a quicksand, and it has been proven time and time again. It's only time it survives is when they pump massive amounts of money in it and they strap it onto something else, and it's never really worked to the extent. Now you can imagine Derry is a nice city. There's plenty of facilities. It's the fourth largest city in Ireland. It could accommodate a good, progressive university. Coleraine has never really taken off in the way that it should.
Well, let's move on a wee bit from the notion of the university. And as I say, that clearly is linked to the economy, because if you've got a healthy, thriving university, you're going to have all sorts of spin-offs in terms of people living there, spending their money, shops, etc. But here's the thing. You've pointed out that Martin McGuinness was a Deputy First Minister. Mark Durkan was a Deputy First Minister, both Derry men. And yet, decades later, here we are, with Derry still, under fire in terms of getting students, still economically deprived, and Strabane along with it. And if you stop to think about it, West Belfast has been represented for the last, I don't know, a long 25 years, maybe 30,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Gerry Adams, was by Gerry Adams, is now by another Sinn Féin man. And
yeah,
it's still a very deprived area. So
yeah.
are we saying that Republican politicians and even nationalist politicians like Mark Durkan aren't able to do the job, are incompetent, can't look after their own electorate?
I'm not sure, Jude, you sort of put the pin, where you position the pin for all this, but there's something wrong. Now, Jude, I would have thought the very least that Mark Durkan and Martin McGuinness would have done was made a massive claim in any government program that the regional imbalance in regard to investment and economic activity should have been addressed. That there should have been serious amount of investment west of the Ban. It hasn't happened. Now I don't know what they bought into. Now the levers of power, Jude, without question, have been with the unionist-controlled administrations in Stormont for years. Most of the top civil servants were unionists. There's no doubt about that. They have diverted. Sure, even do you remember the time the DUP were thumping about that they'd got an extra £1 billion from Theresa May for after this.
Oh yeah.
Right. Sure, 401 was 89 million, and that was right away plowed into something in Belfast, the city centre. I can't remember some sort of centre, a big centre there or something. I can't even remember now, Jude. But at the time, I remember thinking like half of it just appeared. Jude, when was the last big jobs announcement in Derry? I can't remember. When was the last big jobs announcement in Strabane? I can't remember. There's been no new industry and there's been no new infrastructure.
But Pat, well, the question I ask you again is, the person who was representing Derry essentially was Mark Durkan and then Martin McGuinness.
Yeah.
And you still have prominent MLAs from Derry. Have they been asleep at the wheel?
Dude, I can't answer that. I really genuinely don't know, and I don't want to stick the boot in. But the question is, if you're asking me a straight question, I'll give you a straight answer. They haven't delivered. That's for certain.
Well, it might be. Well, I was wondering, would it have been that they felt that they couldn't obviously antagonize unionism again, which is the crime we accuse politicians in the South of. For example, if Martin McGuinness had kept on really banging on the door and saying, look, Derry deserves more resources. Look, build up McGee University. If he'd been doing that, that might have upset unionists, and therefore you might have more and more squabbles, or even bring down the Stormont executive.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware, but I know politics is politics. But Jude, there's also a reality. Jude, I keep referring to this, but I remember very clearly. I think it was about 1985. They did the top 10 wards in Britain for poverty, unemployment, and all the other metrics that and 3 of them or 4 of them were in Derry and Strabane, and all of Britain for poverty, unemployment, like places like Shantallow and Derry, there were 60 and 70% male unemployment. There were no job opportunities. There was poverty. There was all the rest. I don't think all that much has changed. If you go to Shantallow and Gallia today, you'll probably find serious, like 60, 70% male unemployment still.
Yeah, but Pat, I think, we must ask the question, what connection has that with the fact that its political representatives are Derry men? They
certainly haven't delivered, and your point is well made. I'm not arguing, because they must be asleep at the wheel. And I think there's sort of this thing that because it's not a voluntary coalition, there's a mandatory coalition in Northern Ireland, that they're all worried about upsetting each other, and they're not.
The Nationalists and Republicans are worried about upsetting Unionists. I don't think it works the other way, though.
No, well, if you watched Jim Alistair on The View last night,
I recorded it. That's a pleasure.
That's a pleasure that awaits you. Yeah.
But there was one politician from Derry who did make one big, bold move to transform things through economics by bringing jobs. And that was John Hume. Now, he wasn't bringing the jobs as it happens to Derry. He brought them to West Belfast in the form of John DeLorean.
Yeah.
And
I know it ended in tears. The Southern, no, how bad it was. The Southern government would have taken, anything, and they wouldn't take John DeLorean. So somebody should have been asking him questions.
But he did look the part.
Yeah,
he really was an impressive figure.
But hold on, John Hume brought what do you call it, the Seagate to Derry.
Oh,
I think there's about 500 people employed there, and he got the new bridge across the river, and he did a few other things. John actually was very tuned in when it came to economics. And he kept insisting that the airport, the city of Derry airport stayed open. I said to him one day, they worked out that years back that this is, and I mean when money was money, that it was costing every citizen in Derry £10 on their rates each year to keep the city of. And I said, John, that's a ridiculous thing that people are paying for a white elephant. He says, see, in the long term, investment, big American companies and big American industrials only come to a place where there's easy access. Then he says the airport will pay for itself. I'm still waiting for it.
It may do. I wish it all the best, and I really wish it would thrive. But I'm afraid I tend to compare it a wee bit to Knock Airport.
Knock Airport. Knock Airport has taken off, if you'll pardon that expression.
Well, it's been there a long time, and I'm not sure it's really taken off. I mean,
well, I think COVID has killed it a wee bit, but Jude, it was definitely taken off.
Well,
it was.
I'm not sure about it.
No, Jude, hold on.
It wasn't getting many flights coming in. It should have been getting regular flights from America.
Dr. Collins, there was flights coming in from America. There was mainly, by the way, people coming to get health treatments over here, which cost about half the prices they do in America. They started doing continental flights because me and my dear wife went down and we were Ryanair off to various parts of Spain. And and the city of Derry, I think maybe there's 1 or 2 flights a day from Glasgow or somewhere. And Knock, there was 3 and 4 flights a day to various continental. So things were starting to move prior to COVID. Now, I presume COVID is. I disagree with you, Dr. Collins.
I hope you're right. I'll take your word for it. But the fact of the matter is that Knock Airport started under Charlie Haughey. And it's not the day or yesterday that Charlie Haughey was in his pump, as they say.
As they say.
You're talking 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Excuse me, it was Monsignor James Horan, if I remember correctly.
And then Charlie weighed in behind him.
Absolutely.
But Charlie's support was. I'm saying Charlie to place it in time. It's that far away.
40 years ago.
What did they call it? A soggy,
boggy, something or other.
Soggy, boggy airport.
Something
along those lines. They did it. It was great, but I'm not sure it's as good as we'd like to see it being. And likewise with Derry City,
my heart always sinks. I'm going to contradict you, Dr. Collins. You were wrong. It was starting literally to take off.
No, not literally.
Huh?
Not the airport, literally the airport.
not literally the airport. The planes.
Okay. Right. Let's get down to something that I'm very interested in, and that's drugs.
Good for you.
Now, and the other day, was it yesterday actually, David McWilliams, the guy, he's a smart guy.
The economist.
Married to a northerner, talks very interestingly about the notion of a border poll, talks very interestingly about economics. And he has done an article where he is saying essentially, it's time to legalize drugs because the war against drugs has been lost and has been lost for ages. And there were bleeding resources into a futile war. It's like the Vietnam War. It's getting us nowhere. People are dying, and the states, there's guys coming in and shooting each other in broad daylight. That's happened. How long ago now? 5 years ago? 7 years ago? So, would you go with that? Huh?
No, I'm asking you. Do you agree with him or disagree with him?
I do. I definitely do. He says, for example, that we should follow the example of some of the states in the US and in Canada as a country completely, and legalize pot, legalize marijuana, and that it should be. So I think he says, but I certainly would believe it should be sold under government auspices. That is to say, government should run these places where marijuana is available, and they would sell it from there, and they'd probably make a profit on it. And they certainly would save themselves an awful lot of money that they're pumping into rushing around trying to make drug seizures. There was a drug seizure made a couple of days ago in Belfast Port, and they were jumping up and down with delight. And it was, I forget what it was. It was some paltry sum, like about €2 million, I think.
Yeah.
And sure, that compared to the amount of time and money that's been spent on resources, Gardaí resources, police resources, everything. It's ridiculous. They're not going to win it. So regularize at least the softer drugs and use the economy from that to treat, he says, and he's dead right, treat drug taking not as a criminal problem, but as a medical problem.
Yeah. Jude, there was just to follow on from your own point, I think in Hamburg, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, they got 23 tons of Class A cocaine with the biggest, I think it came from Paraguay and Panama, if I remember correctly. They reckon it was worth up to 3.5 billion on the streets, biggest drugs find ever in Europe. And in Cork, I think it was Monday or Tuesday as well, they found in a container 12 million pounds worth of street value of cocaine. So I'm sort of half, someone, I am not totally convinced legalizing it's the right way, but obviously, hey, prohibition doesn't work. That's for certain.
That's right.
We've
That's
seen
the point
that in America.
He makes that point. He made that point about booze. He said the prohibition.
But you're look, booze made Al Capone one of the richest people in America over, and let's be clear too. And by the way, Jude, what strikes me as odd all the time, I am sort of straddling two fences here, never mind one. It always seems to be the wee guy with a couple of ounces of pot that appears before the judge, whereas the big guys never appear before the judge. So a lot of people, if they were doing criminal records for drinking red wine, I'd be spending most of my time in jail. And I don't see the big difference. I really genuinely don't see the big difference between that and smoking a joint, because the effects are pretty much the same.
Yeah. Besides which fact, we talk about drugs, drugs culture and so on. I'm on drugs. I go to the chemist every so often and I get drugs. And if I didn't get them, I probably would be in a pretty unhealthy state. And I imagine yourself might be the same. Anyway, hundreds of people, thousands of people get drugs from a pharmacy, and it helps them to keep alive. And that's a health thing. Now, are you telling me that the way things are running at present, that drug taking is a healthy pursuit? It isn't. The government could, listen to this, a possibility. The government could ban or could accept all drugs as being legal, but only if they're bought in their pharmacies, their drug centers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And they could be sure that the drugs were clean, that they weren't stuff in them that they didn't know about. And they would sell them at a price which would be far more reasonable than the kind of money. My God, the amount of money you need. There's something like about £100 a day to keep yourself in a heroin habit. I mean, it's quite obvious you could produce those at much less. And you also could keep a record of people. They do that with the drugs that I'm taking. How often, and when did you get this last? Oh, okay, that's fine. Oh no, you're asking for this too soon. So I mean, it's quite simple. You just simply tomorrow could begin to solve the drugs problem, and you could put
I hadn't thought of it like that.
All those bastards out of business.
I hadn't thought of it like that. See what you're after saying there. That makes perfect sense to me. But I hadn't thought of it like that. See if you could organize like that. I would think if the state control, look, you can get your heroin here, and it's under controlled circumstances for X amount, and such, you can get whatever it is, and take it away from the underground and the boys making the big profits and the big bucks. Well,
I mean, that's what we do with booze, as I say, and that's what we do with the medical drugs. The one catch is, and McWilliams spotted it, he said the governments would be reluctant to do it because it would mean losing face. They'd have to do a climb down. They'd have to say, all that stuff we spent, all that effort we made, all this talk about finally clearing up these drugs gangs, that was baloney. That was a waste of time. We spent your money.
The reality it doesn't work, isn't it? The reality is it's not working.
It's not working. I am amazed. I'm really amazed that some politician isn't standing up and saying that, you know. They won't even stand up and say, let's legalise the lesser stuff, weed and maybe even cocaine for that matter. But the trouble is, there is the odd guy that does that. It's like one of these guys from, what's his name, from People Before Profit in Dublin.
Well, there was a famous guy, Ming Flanagan.
Oh, I Ming Flanagan, that's right.
And he was a figure of fun, derided.
Yeah,
actually, he was a serious politician.
Exactly.
But he was,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think most people are afraid to, politicians are afraid to open their mouths. But I said actually at a shocking scandal. As McWilliams points out, it's the third most common crime is drugs, having drugs in you. And that's usually the vast majority of those are soft drugs like marijuana.
Yeah.
It's, I tell you, Pat, if I ruled the world,
you would change things.
I forgot the rest of it, but I have the tune in my head, Okay, Pat.
Okay, Jude.
Enjoy your weekend.
And
don't be smoking too much of that Mary Jane. It's not good for you.